Hello, this is Dr. Ben Vilkas, and on this video, series of probably 2 or 3 videos, we're going to look at helping your bilingual emergent students. This was a hour-long conference that we used that I had led last year. It was very good in terms of a lot of student feedback, very interesting. So, with all that being said, if you have comments, if you have suggestions, if you have thoughts or ideas, please email it to me. Love to hear from you. I do get a little controversial here at the second half or second or third video. We'll see how long these areas are. That's totally what I want to do, is I want to kind of stir up some things about what we're doing in America when it comes to language acquisition and language learning in general. So with that being said, I'm going to start off with the fact that I like to use the term bilingual emergent students over English language learners or English learners. A lot of schools will use, say, just ELLs or ELs, just like they use the term SPEDs or SPED students. I'm not a fan of those things. However, I'm sure you'll know those terms. But I like bilingual emergent students as a construct because it more emphasizes what these students are able to bring to our society and to our schools, which is the fact that they are learning at least 2 languages, sometimes more. The average student who is in an English as a second language program actually knows 3 or 4 languages. And English is usually, the 3rd or 4th language they've been learning in their lifetime for many students. So with that being said, I like the term bilingual emergent better than ELL or EL. However, I might slip back into using one of those terms when talking about schools in this video in terms of programming, because you'll hear about EL programs and things like that. Okay, so with that being said, let's dive in. Okay, so recommendation number 1, get to know your students. Now this, like everything else, what can be used with one certain group of students often is used well with all students. You should get to know all your students. And what does it mean to actually get to know your students? When it comes to students who are learning a second language or third or whatever, students who are learning English on top of learning everything else, the more you can learn about their backgrounds, the better, but not in a way that's going to be offsetting or scary, or that you're trying to pry into, when did you come to America? But more like, tell me about yourself, or what's your family like, or what are some of your favorite foods? Bridging into natural conversations of things that help you to learn about the person. In addition, on your own, without trying to get the student to be the expert, learn as much about their country and their region that they came from. So if a student tells you that they came from Mexico, that is the equivalent of a student saying they came from America. So there is a big difference between a kid who came from Los Angeles in America and a kid who came from Wayne, Nebraska, right? So just in the same way, if a child came from Mexico and they tell you that they came from Mexico City, that is going to be a different experience than someone who came from a more rural setting or a more border city. So that knowing about the actual country and region is important. Quick aside, when I first came to Nebraska, I knew I was going to be talking to some students from Guatemala. And so I got some books about Guatemala, read about them, lots of nice pictures. I put sticky notes on where the pictures are. I brought those books to them. And when I saw that I actually cared about their country of origin, they opened up greatly. They loved seeing the books. They loved looking at the pictures. It was a wonderful experience in terms of them pointing and saying, yes, here's the map. This is where I'm from. Another student came and said, this is where I'm from. So the more that you can learn about the countries of origins and the regions, the better. Okay, moving on. So here's the numerical part. That's recommendation number 1, get to know your students. Recommendation number 3, because I'm going to skip number 2 for now, is learn as many practical suggestions that you can about how to help these students in every lesson. And like I said, a lot of these concepts are going to help all your students, but specifically students learning English. So this is where programs like a Sheltered English Emergent program would benefit your students learning English, but it benefits everybody else. Okay, and I'll get back to why I called this number 3 because it's not as important to me as number 2, but I often want students, this is what students want to focus on first, so I listen to my audience. Okay, vocabulary is big. Teaching words and concepts with visuals and gestures is great. Real life objects is the critical thing. I can't stress this. Spending $20 at your local grocery store is so much more valuable than spending $20 buying curriculum from some company. Actually having real life objects and saying, this is an apple, this is an orange. Let's start describing it. This is red. This goes orange. When we slice it inside, this is what we're seeing on the inside, that kind of thing. When it comes to storytelling, using drawings, using felt boards, which I know feels 1960s and 1970s-ish, really old, but they're fun little ways of acting out the scene. Costumes, props, puppets, these are the types of things that engage your students into using language and break through that barrier of silence. It feels like when you're trying to speak a second or third language for the first time, it feels like you're in church and it's very formal and there's a minister talking, like the teacher or the minister or the priest, and you are sitting there going, I'm not going to say anything. Like whatever I say is going to be stupid, so I'm not going to say a single thing. And so that becomes this wall of silence that you have when you're trying to communicate in a second language or third language. So these kind of things like props and puppets and costumes, they break down that barrier. Instead of making it feel like church, it's much more like being on a playground and being comfortable and trying it out. It's a lot easier to play with a puppet and try to use language that way than in front of your classmates and do a presentation for everybody. All right, graphic organizers are key for all kind of learning. If you have a lesson that you're planning and you don't put a graphic organizer in there, that's an issue that you need to resolve and need to fix. Really focus on your grouping of students and how you're grouping students. Your students are going to have friends that they want to be grouped with. That's fine, keep track of that, but then also know who you want them to work with as well and what would benefit them. Do not always have the same kids with the same kids, and don't just simply have the good kids or the best kids or the kids who are best performing be with like the kids who are least performing or those learning English as a second language. I like the concept of clock partners. There's a little label and it allows you to have 4 different partners already set up, so you can simply say get with your 12 o'clock partner, get with your 3 o'clock partner. If you haven't heard that term before, clock partners, you can Google search it and see what I'm talking about, but it really just takes a lot of organization on your hand, how you're going to organize your students. Okay, greet students every day. You should always greet your students every day when they come in, and use different languages. Just go online and type out how to say hello in multiple languages, 20 different languages, and that shows them that you find linguistic diversity fun and engaging. So as they're coming in, it's not just English and Spanish, but all these different languages that you're showing, and they're like, which one's that? What language is that? And you tell them, and oh, that's Russian, or this is Swedish, or whatever. The more you can be patient, provide adequate wait time, that's great. That's a benefit for everybody. And then the concept I really like is area of expertise charts. They used to be called yellow pages because people kind of like that metaphor of yellow pages, and they usually used a big piece of yellow. Here's what the concept is. So imagine you're teaching kindergarten and you have a kid come up to you and say, can you tie my shoe? They're going to do that. They're going to always ask you to do that. What you want to say is, I can do that, but I wonder if there's somebody else in the classroom who's good at tying shoes. And you look around and someone will say, I can tie shoes. Okay, come up here. So let's see how you tie shoes. They tie shoes. They're an expert. So now if kids want to know how to tie a shoe, go to that kid and you put their name on a chart. What this helps to do is show who's good at certain skills, and you build and promote in your classroom where to go for these areas of expertise. And what you really want to do for your kids who are bilingual emergent students is find their area of expertise early. So let's say a kid who is learning English, who came from Serbia, is really good at art. So that person is an expert in art. So you put their name on the expertise chart for art. Okay. So I know I'm going fast here. If you have questions, you have comments, email me. Let me know. I'd be glad to talk to you more about this. All right, more practical suggestions. Look at your students' backgrounds. This is a balancing act. You want to create curriculum that focuses on your students' backgrounds, but still promotes critical thinking, full participation from everybody. You also are teaching your state standards. You're focusing on what you have to teach. So sometimes it might be you're going to compare Nebraska to rural Guatemala, right? There are some similarities and differences. That has a lot of good teaching aspects where you can bring in things that you have to do in terms of analytical writing, compare contrast charts, things like that. So you're still teaching the curriculum, but you're connecting your students together well. All right. Focus on strengths of the students as learners. What are they really good at? Like I said, if students are very visual and they're good at drawing, add more of that to your lesson planning. Please, please, I'm begging you, please, avoid the labels as much as possible. It makes me cringe when I hear kids talk as labels. So use kids' names as much as possible. So if you are working with 3 kids at lunch, in my example, I have 10, Saul and Sochil. I'm going to work with them during lunch. I'm going to do some extra training with them about certain skills. That's how I would refer to that at time period in my life. I would say to another teacher, I'm going to work with 10, Saul and Sochil today. That's appropriate. Saying I have 3 ELLs or 3 ELs coming to me, not cool. Okay. It happens. People do that. But remember, your students are human beings. Use their names. And speaking of names, I don't have this on a slide, but don't change your students' names. Don't shorten their names. If they have 2 last names, let them have 2 last names. Okay? I've heard horror stories after horror stories of teachers who will tell a kid, well, you can only pick 1 last name. We're in America now. Or I can't pronounce your name, so I'm going to call you this instead. Not cool. Okay. All right. One good activity you can do, and it's really nice with technology, is really place yourself in your student's perspective by taking 5 minutes using a program like Google Translate and just translating worksheets you're going to give to students and put it in their language, and then see how you would do. See how confusing it is. See where there's too many words. Especially confusing phrases or idioms, references that you think everyone knows about, but they don't. Jokes that you might make. I mean, let's say you have a yellow line on your playground of the path they're supposed to go, and you go, oh, follow the yellow brick road, and you think everyone knows Wizard of Oz. Well, some kids don't, right? And so those are the kind of things you need to avoid. Finally, label your classroom and hallway as necessary. Okay, so this is a great stopping point for this first video, or this, I made a lot of these videos lately. Can't remember, this took me 1 video. I think this is my first video for this one. This is a good stopping point. If you have questions or comments, please let me know. Then I'll start the next one about the more controversial part. So if you want to know the controversial part, come back for the next video. Thanks.